Good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. Excited to get started. We're going to drive into today's training around government contracting success following my 7-step process. Let me just turn off my captions and we can get rocking and rolling. It's really important to me about process. I've been teaching this since 2018 about process, and process has been everything I've done my entire life. Initially, I wasn't quite aware what process was, and then I evolved into it. An example of initially, I used to be a paper boy when I was 12 years old, 10, 11, 12 years old. And the process, waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, there was a process. You went to this house where they dropped the newspapers off, some neighbor's house, and the way you prepared the newspapers before you went around delivering them, all of it was a process. And I learned right away that you did stuff step by step by step to have the results you're looking for. And it's no different when we're in a billion-dollar industry like the federal market, where we're trying to work with federal buyers. Our activity in here follows a process. And when we follow a process, we're going to have success. I often get hit up by people who talk about doing I feel like I'm doing the right things. I feel like I'm going to the right events, but I'm just lost. I feel like I'm lost in federal sales. I've been doing this a while. I don't know what I might be doing wrong. And what I'd like to suggest is that it generally is nothing you're doing wrong so much as maybe you're not following a mature process. And I put that word mature in front of process on purpose because a process evolves from when you first write it down to as you start following it, you figure out steps that are in the process that may not be necessary or steps that might be missing. And then you get better at each step and you really start improving that process. It's called process maturity. And so that's why I put process or mature process in there. If you're not following a mature process, this could be one of the reasons you're not achieving the scale of success that you want, whether you're just getting started in government contracting or you've been at it a while. Most small businesses that I watch, and actually that's kind of a bad term because I see this even in large firms with people with a lot of experience. They chase opportunities without any real process in place, and it very much shows. I can tell right away when somebody's not following a process, even if their company might have said, "Hey, here's our process," but I can tell when they're not following a process when they're going after every opportunity that pops onto their radar. I listened to somebody respond out there on LinkedIn. I saw it on a post, and they were talking about somebody was saying, "Hey, you should respond to sources sought and RFIs," like I talk about all the time as well. And this person came along and go, "I hear what you're saying, but it really sucks when no one's responding back to you." It's like, no. Your process is to be going after the federal buyer, and one of the best ways to do that is to follow a process of responding to market research. When you're not feeling good about it, it's generally because your process doesn't have you focused on a particular type of opportunity or a particular opportunity. When I'm going after customers, like I have a company called Call Plan AI, and in my company, and many of us do this, we have something called an ICP, an ideal customer profile. And that's that ideal customer that I would love to be working with. That's who I'm building my product for in Call Plan AI, right? For you, it's the same thing, except for you, it might be IOP, ideal opportunity profile. What does the ideal opportunity look like? The other thing is sometimes we're chasing too many customers, right? We're trying to chase the Department of Homeland Security and Department of Army. Well, those are too big for companies that are under 10 million. You got to pick one and just go in there and say, I'm going to go into the Army and I'm not looking at another agency until I grow that to $10 million of revenue. But the reason we feel this need to go somewhere else is because we're chasing two rabbits, or another term is somebody says squirrel. If you think about a dog or a cat, we're like, oh, squirrel. And then you start chasing. It's like, what the heck were you doing? You were doing something here and now you're chasing that. And we need to pull ourselves back from chasing squirrels or, chasing multiple rabbits. There's a line that says, if you chase two rabbits, you're not going to eat tonight. When we do all that kind of chaotic activity, instead of following a mature process, we don't have the success we want. And I want to talk to you today about having the success that you want through process. If that's what you want as well, put process rocks in the chat. Let me know you're along for the ride there. I'm going to break up today's training into 3 different sections. First, I want to talk about the value of process. I really want to make sure we're on the same page of why it is so important. I've been doing process, like I said, my entire life, but certainly my entire professional career. But just because I've been in this, and actually a lot of my career was process improvement, I've lived and breathed this where maybe you haven't. And so I want to kind of just make sure we're on the same page. I'm not saying things that I just make assumptions of how you see things or how you believe. So first I want to talk about that. Then I want to talk about that maturity I mentioned. In process maturity, there are 5 stages of process maturity. And when you understand them, you begin to understand where your company is at and how you need to go to the next level. You don't skip a couple levels. You don't want to do that. You want to go through process maturity slow and steady, and you will get to this ideal state. But it begins with just even understanding the 5 stages of the process maturity. And then the last thing I'm going to wrap up with is my 7-step process for success in the federal market. These 7 steps are how I scaled back the chaos of process that I followed when I was running my companies. There's these models out there that have 100+ steps I need to pay attention to. It's all convoluted. And I boiled it all down and said, it's not complex or convoluted. It is this, and this. These 7 steps lead to sales, or these 6 steps lead to the 7th step, which is sales. That's what I'm going to talk about today. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I am the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I'm founder of Call Plan AI. Go check that out, callplan.ai, when you get a chance. I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market after I got out of the Army, running 2 different government contracting small businesses. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process, A to Z, we have repeatable, predictable results. I got a little smile on my face when I say it's just a process, because it's like, yes, and today's training is all about that process. I'm excited about it. Part of the process I talk about at a high level is networking. Make sure you follow me on LinkedIn. I have 43,000 followers on LinkedIn. We're constantly coming together in and out, networking. And my network is your network. When you connect, you're able to reach out to people, say, hey, I saw you on the training, Kami. Maybe we can connect and see if there's a fit. The other thing is follow my newsletter, Government Contracting Success Newsletter. It's the fastest growing government contracting newsletter, and it is the largest one out there in government contracting. And I'd love to have you in there. They're growing, and my follower count grows because I keep putting out content that's super valuable. Yesterday, I put out content about HHS's vision for AI, their strategy for artificial intelligence. And today I put out something similar from NASA. And these documents are highly valuable. Even if you're not an AI company, you see how these agencies are using AI and how you might be able to use it as well. The last thing I want to mention is tomorrow's training. So I've got scheduled training out the rest of the week. Tomorrow's training is a really exciting one because it came from a subscriber in Call Plan AI who's trying to figure out, like, how, okay, fine, I'm going to the VA. The VA is the right place for me to sell my product and my services, but who do I talk to? How do I build a list of people? And you'll see me talk about this a little bit in today's training. But tomorrow, the training is how I build a list of 200 names in the VA to go after. And you can repeat that process for any particular agency. But in 30 minutes, I'll show you how I build a 200-person list that is my outreach. And I'll talk about that in today's training. But make sure you join tomorrow, register for tomorrow's training, and join me. I'd love to have you in there. Okay, let's understand the value first, right? What's the value of process that is out there? And I thought I'd start with these three elements of overall of process and just learning and how we grow in what we do. And the first step is knowledge, right? Gaining knowledge is something that's really important to our success. And knowledge is about knowing what to do and how it works. Right. So you're coming to me and you're saying, how can I get those 200 names? Well, I'm going to give you the knowledge of what to do to find those 200 names in that activity and how it works, how it aligns with what you're doing. Once you have knowledge, then you can start developing skill. And skill is about being able to apply that knowledge in real situations. So if I tell you conceptually, hey, here's how you get names, numbers, and emails or something. Go to Google, go to LinkedIn, go to their website, go to FPDS, go to USA Spending, go to DSBS. When I tell you these things, you're like, whoa, right? That's the knowledge. That's the what. I've given you the what, but you still don't, know how to do this and to knock it out. And so when you start working on the skill and turning this into a skill of finding names of customers you can reach out to in the federal market, now you're able to apply that knowledge that I taught you and be able to apply it in a real situation. This is why I try to make my training as tactical as possible. Here's the knowledge. It's up to you to start developing the skill, and here's the steps you can do to develop that skill. And then that leads to process, right? So process is about making that skill repeatable, predictable, and adaptable. This is why I like to say, right, A to Z, a process, A to Z, makes it repeatable and predictable. I say this over and over again because I follow a process on how to communicate that. But that's the idea. When you have skill, right, and you perfect that skill and you put it into a process, the ability to see repeatable results, predictable results is very realistic. And the reason I put adaptable in there in process is that's process improvement. You're constantly changing it. For example, in 2024, basically the process of how we did business in the federal market was different than how we do it now. Still a ton of similarities for sure. But because the Trump administration came in and Doge came in and AI came in, all these major shifts in how we did things is changing what's going on around us. And so our process needs to adapt to that new reality of how our federal government buys. And so that's what I mean by a process needs to be adaptable to the situation. And the way you do that is through process improvement, constantly looking at it, making sure it's working for you and moving forward. Like I mentioned here, process makes your results predictable. That's a huge one. You'll see me talk about this in the last slide. But if you want to have predictable sales, then you need to have predictable this, and then predictable this, and then predictable this, right? And that's really important. And process makes everything you do much more predictable, meaning you can see the success that's going to happen. We call this sometimes leading indicators. So you have leading indicators and then a result, and then you have lagging indicators. And so leading indicators might be something like if I send in 4 proposals, that's a leading indicator. If I'm winning 1 out of every 4 proposals, that's a leading indicator that I'm probably going to win a contract. But if I'm not sending 4 in, I'm only sending 2 proposals in, that's a leading indicator that I'm not doing enough to move forward. And then lagging indicators is all the results you look at after the fact. You're like, damn, we're not winning. And I don't want to get too far into that, but that's the predictability of it. The other thing, the other value from process is that it puts you in control. You want to use process wherever you can within your professional life, certainly, and in the federal sales arena. So I'm going to talk to you about the process for getting into an agency and start having success. But this is a very big level process. You can also have process in meetings. Call Plan AI is where I teach, here's how you have a meeting so that you're in control. Excuse me. And when I say you're in control, I don't mean in a negative way for the other party. You're in control of their success and yours. You're taking charge of the meeting by following a process. And so I teach process at all these different levels. You can also look at the things you do and go, where can I put process? Could this be processized, if that's a word? And then the last thing is to reduce costs. The more predictable the process, the more predictable the activity that you do, and the more repeatable, you'll see this in a minute, but the more it can be done correctly so you're not having wasted costs. And then you can have process cost improvement where you're figuring out how to do it at a far less cost. I'll give you a quick example. I do these lives, and then on YouTube, I go in and I post them as a regular video, not just the YouTube live. Anyways, used to do that manually. And then as I improved the process and I said, this is exactly how we do it manually, and we did it over and over again, then I used AI a few months back. And now immediately following this live, I have an AI application that grabs this live content and puts it on YouTube and does it the way I want to do. I'm not even in the pit. I don't even pay attention to it. It just happens. That's reducing the cost on even like how I do this. But I wasn't able to do that until I had a good solid process for doing it. So these are the values behind process. And I just wanted to give you my intro on that. Okay, so let's talk about the 5 stages of process. All throughout your company, you have all sorts of different activities, whether it's receiving mail or processing payroll or doing sales. All these things are processes within your company. And each one of them has different levels of maturity. And I wanted to share with you the 5 stages of process maturity that's out there. I first got introduced to process maturity as a software engineer, a network engineer, doing IT support and software support. There was something called a Capability Maturity Model Index, CMMI. And this was how mature a company was in writing software, writing new applications, right, or creating new applications. And in America, back when I was doing it, level 5, I didn't put numbers here, I should have, but level 5 that optimized, there was only 43 companies in America who had level 5. And so when you think about 30 million companies as a big number, and you bring that down to just 43, it takes time to get there and commitment. But before you even get to the commitment and the time, you have to have an understanding of what those stages of maturity your process is going to go through. So the first stage is initial. And this is basically the same as saying you have no process. You do it, but there's no process. At best, you have firefighters that, somebody in your company is like, oh, they can do it, but they don't even repeat it the same way every time. And so at the initial stage, you can recognize that you're in this stage when what you're doing is ad hoc. Think about how you evaluate a proposal, or an RFP that comes out, or an opportunity. Do you evaluate and follow the exact same steps to evaluate that opportunity every single time? If you're not, then you're just doing it at an ad hoc level. And by the way, this is not a judgment call. I'm just saying the farther you mature in your processes for analyzing an opportunity, for example, the farther you mature in that process, the better it is for you and for your company. The more chance you'll find the opportunities your company really can win. And then the other thing is the results are unpredictable. So sometimes you evaluate opportunities, just using that example, you evaluate opportunities in this ad hoc way. And so every time it's a little different. And the quality of your pipeline is unpredictable. The results of how each person in the company does something, you're like, how'd you pick this opportunity? Well, I looked at this and this. Yeah, I would have said this is a no. And you say it's a strong yes. That makes it unpredictable in there, or chaotic, right? And that's, you can recognize chaos also inside of a sales pipeline. If I stay in that theme, by a pipeline that has way too many opportunities. Let's say any company that has more than 50 opportunities in the pipeline has chaos in your pipeline. For a small business, 50 opportunities is a ton, right? Are you really going to be able to do capture and proposal writing on winning it? And so maybe what we're doing is not really following a process. We're seeing something we like, squirrel, or we're chasing a couple of rabbits and we just put it in the pipeline. Anyways, that's the first stage of process maturity. It's called initial. And then as you actually start taking steps to mature your process, then you're making it repeatable. So at this point, you have a process. Everybody is like, hey, we get an opportunity. We look at it this way, and we follow it. Kind of like a verbal agreement to look at opportunities and evaluate them in a certain way. But they're not standardized. And what I mean by that is we kind of agreed to it in the staff meeting, and then everybody went away, and they're moving forward. Standardized is the next level of maturity, right? Where you actually have written down. I've taught this a lot, where I say write down the criteria for the opportunities you want. If we think about the process of identifying the best opportunities for your sales pipeline, standardizing it, you would have criteria in there. You would have the process documented for people to do that. And so if all you do is talk about it, and everybody kind of agrees that we're looking at Army opportunities that are in cybersecurity, right? And they're kind of at this level. Well, that puts us at this repeatable stage of maturity. It's a great stage to be at compared to stage 1, which is initial, right? But the idea is you're still kind of winging it. There is no standardization, which still makes predictability in your company pretty hard. But at least everybody now has established that we should follow a process. And the process kind of looks like this. Then as we move to the next level of maturity, we're talking about defined. This is really the ultimate place to be at, because everything beyond this is it doesn't matter if you get to stage 4 or 5 as much as it matters to get to stage 3. Stage 3 is where you document it. You sit there and say, this is exactly our process for doing something. So if I say this is our process for finding a teammate, then what I say is we fill out a teaming worksheet. We make sure we identify all the parts that are on it. We align that back with this. We put it into this tool that we have. And then we reach out to each vendor exactly the same way. With this email, would you please follow back up with 2 days, whatever it is, that kind of stuff, right? It's documented as this is the way we do it. And then standardized is that everybody is following this process. If you think about that, it does me no good to have a process documented and then nobody following it, or only I'm following it. It's like, well, then we're still at the repeatable or maybe even ad hoc level, even though it's documented. But when it's documented and standardized, meaning it's a standard process for all of us to do, and we all are doing it, then we're at that defined level. We're at stage 3 of the process maturity level. The next stage, level 4, stage 4 is where it's managed. And so at this point, you're really looking at the maturity of it. I did this with NDAs with one of our customers, where when an NDA request would come in, the process was to have everybody instantly put the request, even while they were on a sales call, put the request into an NDA tool that said, hey, I'm looking for an NDA. Here's the key information. And the reason we standardized this process is because the lawyer's time kept getting wasted by trying to find phone numbers or email addresses or key points of contact, whatever. And so we said, hey, let's make sure the process is mature, where the capture manager or the BD person's finding all the information, putting it into this tool, then it goes forward. Then everybody knows how many NDAs that the lawyers have that they're trying to get done and when it'll come out, et cetera. Well, that's managed. It's in a tool, and it's monitored by everybody, including the people doing the work. And it's controlled by key performance indicators. For example, an NDA request, it does not matter until, like, we don't start tracking it until all the data has been completed. And so we can track a metric in there that says, hey, it takes you 2 weeks to put something into our NDA tool and then fill all the information out. But when it gets to the lawyers have 48 hours to turn it around. And hey, look at this. They're doing it in half that time, or they're doing it double the time. Why are you doing it double the time? Well, because we got too many requests. It's like, oh, let's get you more lawyers, right? All of that can be controlled through these KPOs, because now we're managing the process and we're monitoring it across the entire organization. We're all aligned on that. That is the idea of process in there. And then the last one is optimize, continuously improving it. So once we have that good process, it doesn't always stay perfect. So you want to make sure you're monitoring it. Is it working for everybody? Like I said, with the federal government changing what they do, do we need to change what we do in our process? That's the idea of optimization, is just continuous process improvement. Okay, so that was a lot in there, but I really like the 5 stages, because when you understand that, then you look at every aspect of what you do and go, how can I mature it? Put process maturity rocks in the chat if you followed along with that. As I thank our sponsors for today, I really appreciate Voltron for being our sponsors. These guys are a federally focused AI proposal writing company. And so they help you write proposals faster, especially they play at the much larger levels, supporting companies 50 million to into the billions. But they're also able to help small businesses below that 50 million mark. And you want to check them out if you're looking to write specifically proposals in the federal market. And please thank Voltron for being our sponsor today. Okay, so I got a few minutes left, and I want to share the 7-step process that I teach. So I took the complex out there, and I said, how can I create a process based on standard federal market best practices, but how can I create a process that I could teach an intern what to do, but it was good enough for somebody like me or others who have 20 plus years of experience in the federal market, right? Something that makes me realize this is how I'm going to go forward. So if I use the VA as an example, and I say, I want to get into the VA, I've never been in the VA before, then I want to go through these 7 stages to hit my revenue goals. And really quickly, the way I break down the 7 steps is into 2 categories. First is building relationships, because when you have relationships, then sales is so much easier. And so in the beginning, we've got to establish a presence within the VA, and I'm building a relationship, right? And in there, the first step is research. What I describe this as is understanding Business development has this concept of understanding the customer almost better than they understand themselves. So researching their organization, gathering their budget documents, their strategic documents, beginning to understand that agency's mission. That's the research I'm doing. And so if I'm trying to get into the VA, I want to understand how are they organized? Which administration within the VA is the right place to go? Within the Veterans Administration, which organization structure should I be going down to be able to find my likely customers? And so research allows me to understand that agency. Then I'm moving into targeting. Step 2 of the process is building a list of 200 people in the VA. Like that's exactly what I would say targeting is about. If I want to get in the VA, then targeting is building a list of 200 people I can reach out and call and see if I can get a meeting, see if I can start getting traction out there. And so these 200 people, they're made up of government and industry partners, let's say, or people. So government, it could be small business professionals, it could be contracting or acquisition professionals, or it could be the program office folks. And so those 3 categories of people from the government. And then in industry, in targeting, I can add in people who are winning contracts within those agencies. For example, small businesses and large businesses. Those are really important groups of people. And so I've got those 5 groups of people that I'm going to try to build out my 200-person target list. When I have that, I move to step 3, which is outreach. Outreach is about picking up the phone and getting a meeting. It's about having the first couple of meetings that is going to establish a relationship. So in here is where you're first just trying to get some of those 200 people. If you got 25 out of 200 people to give you a meeting, that's really good results. That's why you have 200 people you're trying to reach out to, because not everybody's going to get back to you. And not everybody who gets back to you is going to want to meet. But with 200 people in your target list, when you do outreach, you will find people who will say, come on in, let's have a meeting. And you'll start learning more about that agency. You'll start getting introductions to other people. You'll start hearing about opportunities, et cetera. And that's why outreach leads to relationships. And I call it the path to relationships, because when you get on the wheel of success that I'm showing here, step 4 is strategic relationships. These are relationships where people are going to work with you. They're willing to talk with you to help you learn more about the agency and help you navigate the agency towards success. When you have these relationships, you move on to step 5, which are slam dunk opportunities. You'll hear about slam dunk opportunities that you can win. It's through these people, right? You can hear about opportunities using FPDS or SAM.gov. But when you have relationships, you hear about opportunities earlier. You begin to find opportunities that specifically align to what you do instead of kind of align and you're wasting time over there, right? And so relationships lead to step 5, which is opportunities that fill your pipeline. At this stage of the process, you're filling your pipeline with what I call slam dunk opportunities that seem like they were written specifically for your company. And then stage 6 is proposals. When you've got a good pipeline of opportunities, that'll naturally lead to you being able to write proposals, getting proposals out the door that are what I call winning proposals. Winning proposals are proposals that when it goes to the federal buyer, they're like, man, I wish I could award to this company. I love this, right? And there might be competitors in there with winning proposals. What you don't want is an unwinning proposal or a failing proposal, right? And when you have good opportunities in your pipeline, step 5, you're able to write winning proposals in step 6, which leads to step 7, sales. You're going to win contracts. And the reason I call that a wheel of success is because once you're on that wheel with strategic relationships, you're going to hear about opportunities, and some of those opportunities you're going to be able to write proposals to, and some of those proposals are going to win, which will strengthen the relationship you have with that customer, like the VA in this case. And it's this circle. You still can do some of that path to relationship, but you won't have to do as much of that because you'll get introductions because you're doing good work in an agency. One hospital in the VA will introduce you to another hospital. So it becomes much easier once you're on that wheel of success. This is the 7-step process that I teach. I have taught this at least 100 times out there, so you can find me always covering it from different angles. Each one of these I have done, each process step I have done separate training for as well. So if you want to dig down into one, you can. Come over to Call Plan AI, for example. If you're in that outreach or relationship stage, that's what I'm building that for. Here's what I want you to remember from today's training. First off, those 3 things from early on, right? Knowledge is what to do. You need to gain knowledge. That's why you come into the training. Knowledge is what to do. Skill is how you do it. It's the practice so that you get good at that. And then process is how do you do it every time for repeatable, predictable results. When you follow this, you're going to increase the predictability of your results and the repeatability of the success from your process. Don't forget to register for training tomorrow. If you found value in my training, do me a favor, repost this on LinkedIn. Just don't bother using comments. Just say repost, no comments, and push it out so that people in your network learn about me and about our training and help us grow this broader community. I'm out of time. Remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I will see you in the next training.